Okay, testing, testing. Testing. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Excellent. All right, we'll be live in 5. Okay, good morning, everyone. So, welcome to the latest installment of Upskill and Chill. As you can tell, I'm down one co-host. Spencer's on vacation now. He definitely deserves that vacation, so we're gonna carry on without him for a week, and maybe a week or two. We'll see if he's back next week. If he or maybe he decides to stay on permanent vacation. Who knows? Okay. So with that in mind, we have a lot to get to today, so I want to just jump in. I don't have any music to share this week. We'll save that for another week when Spencer and I can share together. Um, so this week, something I've been working on is delving into the world of testing. In this case, specifically unit testing. It's not something I have much experience with, so I've been looking to up my game on personal projects by including unit testing, so that I can have a more consistent code base that functions as intended, and that I'm unit by unit actually monitoring if things are functioning the way that I intended them for them to. Um, I've been using Jest inside of the Next ecosystem. It seemed like a natural first step. I started researching testing libraries and frameworks, and got a little lost in where should I start? Where should I start? And like all decisions in tech, when you have lots of options like that, sometimes it's best just to choose one and get going. So I chose Jest. Um, Now, what I want to do is get the Jest framework installed into our app and operating, and then I want to build another endpoint. The last few weeks, or a couple weeks ago, really, we started building endpoints for our to-do list app. So right now we have a post and a get all endpoint, meaning we can return all. Um, how do you call it? We can return all tasks for our to-do list, and we can also create tasks. Returning all is the get, and the post is creating. So what I want to do is create a get ID route, get by through ID route, so we can get a specific task. And the way we'll do that, we'll get into that later. But first, let's actually get started by implementing Jest into our little to-do app ecosystem. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen here. There we go. All right. So excellent. Okay. So we're sharing our screen. We're looking at the apps in the Next.js documentation. Sorry, not the apps. Documentation for Next.js for implementing Jest into it. Now, I've already done this once recently, so I'm going to go ahead and follow the same pathway because I know that I can get it working this way. Since we've already created our app, we can't just create it with Jest installed default. So we're going to use npm to actually install. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy this command. But just to go over what it's actually doing, you can see we're going to install Jest, Jest environment, JS DOM. We're going to include the testing library for React testing library, as well as the Jest DOM testing library. Okay, let's navigate over here, back to Upskill and Chill. We'll go ahead and run this command. See how this goes. Okay, and just to confirm, looks like we're in. Beautiful. So now we have Jest installed as well as the testing libraries. Now we need to create a Jest configuration file. Right. So we'll go ahead and run this command, npm init jest at latest. And it's going to walk us through questions, much like when you create a new Next app. Okay. We want to use Jest when running test script. Yes, we do. We want to use TypeScript for the configuration file. Yes, we'll keep everything to TypeScript. test environment we'll be using, we're going to use Node. Coverage reports, yes, although, to be honest, I don't know what that is yet. We'll get into that later. Which provider? We will use V8, that's the Node engine. Automatically clear mock calls, instances, context, and results before every test. I think that feels right. We want to start from a baseline every time. And our configuration file is created. So let's talk about what just happened here. One, we've created a config file. This essentially configures Jest. We'll go ahead and save here so we get our nice spacing. And you can see that we actually have settings from that intro set of questions that Jest has just asked us. Now, all that said, I already knew we were going to copy over all of this. We're going to paste over all this, rather. Because, navigating back to the documentation, they actually present a jestconfig.ts file, and I think we should use this just because, for one, it's a little easier to read, and I like the way that it's organized a bit better. I do like the tendency in a lot of these modern config setups to have all these other options explained and sort of a default value listed, just in case I wanted to, for instance, include test results processor or something like that. But ultimately, I think for our purposes, it's just clouding up the actual page, and we don't need too much right now. We're just getting started. That will all be important later on down the line, I'm sure. So let's go ahead and copy this file. I'm going to select everything in here and paste it in. Okay, so we're importing a config type. We're importing next.js. So let's see, creating jest config, provide the path to your Next.js app to load the config.js and .env files in your test environment. Makes sense. Add any custom config to be passed to Jest. You can see things that stick around: our coverage provider, being the Node V8 engine, and then test environment, JS DOM. We don't need to set up anything else at the moment. We don't have any env file. Actually, no, we do have an env file. So with that, let me just take a look at this. Set up files after env. In fact, I think there's actually something in the docs about this. I was working on another project recently where I don't have an env file at this moment, so didn't need to configure that. But this is a good chance to take a look. We're already, actually, let's go down the list here. So handling absolute imports and module path aliases. I don't think we need to worry about this. We already have that set up. Just to confirm, inside of our package.json, or actually our tsconfig. Right, we already have our paths configured. Okay, extend Jest with custom matchers. So the testing library Jest DOM includes a set of convenient custom matchers, such as to be in the document. Very useful, making it easier to write tests. You can import the custom matchers for every test by adding the following option to the Jest configuration file. Oh, I see. Oh, that is quite useful. If I understand correctly, by adding this import, we can import every single test, every single matcher without having to import them directly. They'll just sort of be available within our file. So I'm going to go ahead and add this. I think this was already inside of our Jest config. Set of files after env, is that right? Root directory, jest.setup.ts. Perfect. Okay. Beautiful. Okay, next, we need to set up our test commands. Okay. So let's navigate to our package.json. And I think one of these is probably included out of the box, which is testing Jest. Just to keep things consistent, test Jest, we're also going to add this line, test watch, Jest watch. Gotcha. So test :watch. We're going to do Jest watch. Is that right? There we go. Okay. And so just watch allows us to rerun tests when a file is changed. That's very useful. Perfect. And then we're going to get into actually creating tests. Beautiful. So I'm going to follow the convention that they list here. I'm sure there are other ways to do it, but being very new to testing, I don't have a lot of experience in this particular realm. So let's go ahead. And actually, before we do all that, let's go ahead and save all the changes we just made. And git commit them. So we're going to call this added just testing suite. We'll push that up to my personal repo. Okay, excellent. Now, they're talking about creating a folder called __tests __ in our root directory. Okay, so we'll navigate over to the root directory. Call this tests. Okay. And okay, so it's page.test.jsx. Okay, since we are going to test, well, let's test something simple first, and then we can create more complex tests down the line, I think. So I'll follow this convention yet again, and inside of tests, we'll create a page.test.tsx file. Is that right? Okay. And again, I'll just copy this, and we'll walk through it together. Okay. So let's fix a few things here. Okay, so we're importing the whole testing library, which we already configured. We're importing render and screen from the React testing library. Render, I believe, renders the actual component within the function that we're going to create, and screen allows us to actually access what should be on the screen. I believe this is our way that we. This is the main object from which we'll use methods to grab specific elements inside of our page. And the default here is that they're grabbing a heading. So they're looking for a heading, which would be like an H1, H2, or something like that. And then because we're getting it by role, and that's what the role of those H's is heading. And then they're choosing level 1, which happens to be H1. So meaning if I put in level 2, it would automatically look for H2 headings. And then I've read that if you pass nothing in but just a heading, it defaults to H2. So little tip for you there. But okay, so obviously something is wrong here. It looks like TypeScript is maybe mad. Yes, let's see. Cannot find name describe. Do you need to install type definitions for a test runner? Ah, yes. We have not installed. I haven't installed any types for Jest. Okay. Let's see. Yes, I can just copy this. Perfect. Let's do that. We got to have our types locked down. You know, TypeScript gets mad, and all we can do is placate it. Ah, excellent. So here we are. No errors, nothing. Now, the question is, so we're importing page from app page. Is that right? App page, all the way down here. Okay. So this should fail the test, is my thought, because there's no H1 on this page. So let's take a look at that. If I run this test. Oh, look at that wall of red text. Failed to parse the TypeScript config file. Just TS node is required for the TypeScript config files. Make sure it's installed. Okay, well, let's take a look. Kind of remember. Do we have TS node? No, we don't, as far as I can tell. Types no, we don't. Okay. So let me make sure I know how to best install that. Install ts node. Assuming, yeah, this is a dev dependency, since TypeScript is itself a dev dependency. We're not actually running TypeScript in the production build. Okay. This should be easy enough then. Let's go ahead and install. Oops. I'm going to paste that. Okay. Looking good. Let's try to run that test again. The tension here is palpable. Okay, what's going on here? Validation error. Module root directory was not found. Okay, let's take a look at this. I didn't have this problem yesterday. Coming back here. Maybe it's because it's not supposed to be just blank root directory. Okay. Import the custom matchers for every test by adding the following option to the jest configuration file. Interesting. I wonder if I need to set up, where are you? Jest config. Don't really have a root directory. Would this change anything? I love just trying things. Though I can honestly say, oh yeah, here we go. The setup files out here was not found. Okay, so let me do this then. Let's actually remove this option and see if we have any issues. Well, the test run. Okay, were there any issues? Well, we failed the test. Navigating back to our test. Because renders a heading, so okay. Unable to find an accessible element with the role heading. Here are the accessible ones, or accessible roles. So we have a main, and then we have some links with names. Okay. And then here are the ignored nodes, comment script style. Yeah, so one great thing about testing that I'm learning at least is that accessibility is sort of developed hand in hand with testing. And what I mean by that is that at least with Jest, it seems like they use accessibility terms to actually grab these different elements that we would test for. So for instance, heading, I believe, is an accessibility role. And you can assign roles to different elements on your page, because not every element has a default role that you can address it by. The other thing is that the name property on HTML elements can be used to specifically grab elements in testing, and the benefit is that you're also developing accessibility functionality on your particular app. We should all think about that as we're developing our applications. Some people use screen readers and other methods. Not everyone has the ability to just look in here and use their hands to navigate websites. So we should keep them in mind as we develop. And I think what's happening here is that there are some ignored nodes or elements essentially within our application that are not being that we cannot get by these methods, which means that probably down the line, maybe even today, Spencer and I need to go through and probably assign some specific names and roles to some of these elements so that they can be navigated more easily and so that we can test them more effectively. But okay. this is the expected result. We did not expect this to pass because we don't have a heading on this page. So let's try this. I believe main is actually one of the roles. And we do have a main on this page. As you can see, it says here are the accessible roles main, and that should access our main component. So let's go ahead and try this again. I'm going to rename this main, and that's what we're going to look for. Success! It's on the page. Beautiful. One passed, one total. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on in this test. Okay, so describe, to be honest, let's see. I'm not fully sure. Well, no, I suppose describe does two things. You pass in an argument that describes the actual test itself. We don't have much here, it just says page. And then you pass in a function that actually runs, that is the actual test. Okay, so what is inside of our function? We have it, we have render, we have screen.getByRole, and then we have an expect dot to be in the document. So let's go through these one by one. So it, this is our testing method, and you could use this interchangeably with test. I did a little dive on this yesterday. And test and it are identical in terms of functionality. They do the exact same thing as per the Jest docs. The only difference is for readability. So you notice that test renders a heading, doesn't really read like a complete sentence, but when it was it renders a heading. So inside of it or test, our first argument is going to be a description of what should happen. Okay, so it renders a heading. So if this test passed, that's exactly what should happen and what should pass the test. If we wanted to use test, we would just want to rewrite this to be a bit more readable, especially, you know, if you consider other people might be reading your code. So test that it renders a heading would make more sense. Same functionality, it just, this is all for readability. I tend to prefer shorter in most cases to longer lines. So it renders a heading and it in general appeals to me, but I'm sure there are reasons to use test or scenarios rather where it's more appropriate. Okay, so we know we're passing our message in the first argument. Next argument, we're going to pass another function, and this is the function that's actually going to test, that's going to test a very specific action. And I should note, you can pass multiple test or it functions inside of a single describe. Describe allows you to group these tests. Yeah, we'll leave that empty for now, but we will test something else in a little bit just to make sure that that's actually true. Okay, so what happens? Well, we're rendering the page, and page is coming from our app page, which happens to be the essentially the home page file for us. This is the base route. If I start up the server, this is like localhost route. We're importing that whole page, and then we're rendering it for the test to be able to test. And then next, we're defining the main. We're using screen, which essentially has a whole host of methods that allows us to grab different elements that we can then test. And in this case, the setup method was getByRole. And so we talked a little about roles already. I'm searching by main because main is a role, which corresponds, turns out, to the main element, which is like the main content of your app. And then we have expect to be in the document. And this is not always intuitive, I think, for people first getting into testing. But one thing I'm liking is that, at least in Jest, a lot of these functions and chains are built to be readable, so that you actually read it and kind of understand what's going on. So we have expect. We're passing in the main element that we've already grabbed. And then we're running the method to be in the document, which really means just it's here. You can look into the docs if you're more interested about this. I actually had a hard time finding this particular method somewhere in documentation, but it is referenced, and there are multiple places where you can see what it does. One thing to note that gets a little confusing is that we're really using two separate testing suites at the moment. We're using Jest, but we're also using the React testing library. And so there are different methods and functions available per these different libraries. And you can mix and match them, it seems. That's at least been my experience thus far. But like, let's see, expect and to be in the document. Let's see if we hold it over, will it tell us? So the expect is Jest. To be in the document is, try to see. I suppose this comes from Jest also, but it might also be a React testing library method. But then you notice, so this comes from Jest, but screen and render come from the React testing library. So we're combining these tools to actually test our app. Okay, so we've gone ahead. We've tested that there's going to be a main element inside of our app. Let's leave that for now. And I'm going to go ahead and expand the description. Let's call this page homepage renders completely. And actually, I just want to take a look. I'm going to go ahead and fire up our application so we can just see what is showing up. Right. So here's our maps and to-do app. I don't have maps, so we won't test that right now. I haven't set that up, rather. But our main, which is what contains all of this at this point, does show up, and then we have our button for to-do app. And actually, let me double check. I can check in our code. Actually, what is that particular element? Oh, it's a link, right? Okay, so let's create a test to see to double check that this link is actually rendering correctly. Maybe we can even test for both links. So inside of here, it renders two links, we'll say. Okay. So we'll go ahead and render page again. I'm honestly not sure if this is the usual design pattern, or if like you want to render the page only once. I don't know. We'll find out as we go. Okay, so we're gonna go const links screen, and then we're gonna get by all roles. Get by all roles. That must not be it. Let's go to the documentation. So screen. Screen is React testing library. Perfect. You can tell it's this little octopus. Okay. Oh, get all by. Ah, that's the issue. So you can get by role or get all by role. Hey, there we go. Okay. Now the issue was what are we even calling these? They're links. Okay. What this should do is create an array of the elements when you get all by. So you could even get a single element with this method, but it will return an array with just one member inside of it if there's only one to be found. Whereas grabbing just by role, or just one of them, is only going to return the element itself, not an array or a group of them. Okay, so we have our links. Now, expect So here's the question. How do we check that each of these is going to be inside the document? Can I just run expect links to be in the document? Let's see. I'm not really sure that this works, but we're going to find out together. Okay, so we passed one test and we failed the other. I can guess which one is which. Homepage renders completely, renders two links. Oh, okay, right. So we're inside the homepage renders completely group of tests, and then renders two links is what failed. Expect received. So receive value must be an HTML element or an SVG element, and we passed in an array. Okay, so this doesn't work. Now we know. Lucky us. Okay, so off the top of my head, there are probably two ways that we can solve this. I'm assuming we can do something like for, and then we'll each link of links, we will run this code. I know that that would just work out of the box, but I don't want to put it here. I know this is probably not considered the most readable line of code, but I'm such a big fan of not having to put curly braces in and just, if you only have one line to run in a loop or a conditional like an if or an else, I love just this one line like this. It just keeps the page so much more compact. Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, what we're about to do is for each link inside of our links array, we're going to test, expect it to be in the document. Expect link to be in the document. Okay, let's see how that rolls, how that runs rather. Okay, so we have one test suite, and the tests both passed. We render two links, and we render a heading. Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save all, or rather commit all of this. And let's see, what did I change? We edit that. Let's do this in a couple. First, we're going to add tests. Added tests folder, first test file. Good. And then we'll add the rest. We're just going to say edited just config and added TS node. Beautiful. Push all that up. Got to save it to the online repo. Okay. So we've created our suite of tests, our first one at least, and we've successfully configured and run them for the first time. Now what? Now I want to change focus. Let's see, yeah, we're about half an hour in. Let's navigate back to our API folder. I'm going to close a couple of these just because there's a lot going on here right now. And I don't know, I'm finding this is probably not the most popular like workflow or opinion on this, but I actually like to try to keep my tabs pretty clear up at the top. The more cluttered it is, the more annoyed I am with trying to find the right file, and especially in a file like this, in a project like a Next.js project, you have a lot of files that are named the same. So if I open up page.tsx under to do and page.tsx just under the app folder, I know that there's this little extra identifier so you know which one you're looking at. But honestly, I just find it a little confusing. I like to only have open what I'm specifically working on in the moment. No better or worse than anything else, it just is what it is. Okay. So, good. Now we have our test set. I do want to test some backend, some of our API calls. But first I want to build a route that we're going to test. So we're going to go ahead and add another folder. So remember with routing and our API, it works the same way, at least within Next, as the front end, in that you'll create a route. So in this case, we create a task, and then you can create sub routes or extensions of that route. I'm actually not sure what the right terminology is. Look that up later for y'all. But like for instance, inside of task, we're now going to create an ID folder. And this, when we actually hit the API, we'll do /task and then /our whatever ID, and in return the specific, we'll have a set of what do you call it, REST endpoints specifically for that ID. So it works much the same way that the first set of routes worked. We're going to do route.tsx, and let's take a look here. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and include both of these. And let's see what the syntax was. Export async function. Okay, so we're going to make a GET request. We're going to try to just return a single task based on its ID. Okay, so export. Set export default. Export async. Okay. Async function get. But there will be some extra things to pass in this time around. And actually, what I want to do, yes, I want to be able to compare them. Very useful functionality. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and pass in our request. And then our function itself. Okay. I suppose another thing that we're passing in are parameters. If you give me just a moment, I want to bring up my notes real quick here. It's been just a second since I did this last. I have this restaurant app. Restaurant training app I've been building with a friend, and I've been handling the back end or the API through Next, just like we're doing here. And I really like it, but there is a lot to consider. Yes, of course. Okay. So when you're querying a specific ID route, one thing that you're going to have access to is the actual ID passed inside of the parameter, or the ID parameter passed inside the URL as one of the parameters. So what I will do, just to make this a little more readable, is start spacing things out a bit differently. So what we will do, set up that here like this. Beautiful. Okay. We're also going to pass params. And then I'll need to type this. So what parameters are we passing in? Call this rec params. We'll just do the type out here. And I think we're just passing in an ID, which should be a string, if I'm not mistaken. A string only because that's what we get from URLs. Let's see if that works. Is that right? Params is read, its value is never declared, does not exist on type. Oh, right, because it will be params, and then inside of params we'll have an ID. Okay. That should make more sense. I don't know why I don't like that down there. Okay, cool. Okay, so now we're going to try to find a specific task. So we're going to say const task equals await prisma.task dot find unique, and we're going to pass in an object with a where property, and inside where it's going to be ID parse int params.id. Type number is not assignable to type string. Okay. Oh, well, let's see. How do we actually have our ID typed? Oh, the type is a string. Okay, perfect. Don't even need this parse int. That's even easier. Ah, look at that. When TypeScript is happy, we're all happy. Okay. And the last thing is we're going to want to return the actual, what do you call it? The actual task. Pass a status of 200. In the event that this all works out. Okay. Just like other get functions, we're not really using the request. There's no body that we're passing or anything like that. This is quite a simple request. Okay. So let's give this a try. And I'm going to go ahead and restart the server. I forget if I can make changes to the API. And actually, I suppose, yeah, we'll need it running, but I'm going to use the testing suite to actually test if this is working. Okay. So let's create a new file inside of tests. We're going to call this api.test.tsx. And let's go ahead and bring up the page test, just so we can sort of copy what's going on here. I apologize. This might be where it gets a little slow to watch me go through this at least, but you all know what this workflow is like, so I'm not too worried about you. So I suppose right off the bat, we are not going to need render or screen for this. Because we're not rendering a page, we're just testing the API, and we're not rendering a screen. We don't need screen because we're not grabbing actual specific elements. We want to actually ping the API and make sure something is coming back correctly. So this is going to require a look at the docs, I think. How to test API endpoints with Jest. Look at that. I've already searched it. Using Express and only Jest. Let's take a look here. Oh, I wonder if test coverage is that report that comes out at the after we run our tests. Might be. Okay. Okay, here's what I was looking for. Describe, insert. Okay. After each, just restore all mocks. Gotcha. Test. Should insert data correctly. Okay. It's probably a bit advanced, honestly, for what I'm looking for. I have seen these docs before. Testing CRUD actions. That's what we're doing. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so let's set up our describe. Describe. We're getting from, oh, we're not getting cats though. Describe get task. Is it tasks? It's task /ID. Pass it a function. Okay, and inside they have test. So we'll go ahead and say it returns one task. Keep it nice and simple to begin with. So what's going to happen inside of here? Oh, and it looks like I need to make this an async function. Of course, since we're making an API call. So we're going to create the API call itself, stored in a response. Then we're going to grab, they have cats, we'll grab our task out of the body, out of the response rather. And then okay, so we'll take our status code, we'll test that that's 200, we want there to be, okay. Where do they get cat from? Cat 0 to equal cat. Where is cat defined? It's interesting. One thing I'm noticing too, this is not related to this particular subject, but I noticed that their routes are plural, cats, cats, cats. And I'm wondering if we should do that in the future. We should probably make this route tasks. I believe I've read before that that's actually sort of a commonly accepted, what do you call it, like paradigm for developing endpoint routes. But I'll have to look more into that. We'll take it as it is for now. Okay, so let's go ahead and make our call. How were we running this before? Inside of to do, I want you over here. Get tasks. Okay, I'm gonna run it like this. I suppose we'll do a try catch. Actually, we don't need a try catch because we don't want to get an error in here. We're just testing if this works in the first place. Let's do const res equals await fetch, and then we're doing API. That's our route task. And then ID. I suppose for now we should pass in a specific UUID since we already have access to those. I'm going to navigate over to our Neon console and just grab one of these UUIDs just to test. Let's go ahead and copy that. Navigate back over here. Can I put that in? Perfect. Okay. And then inside that we have, we'll say const task equals await res.json. Okay. Tasks with data. Interesting. Okay. So this should return a task. I'm not fully sure. I'm going very quickly, of course. It's good to test these things one at a time. But, I can be impatient. So here we are, being impatient. Okay, so let's get our API test back over here. And where was this route? Perfect. Okay, and then referring back to the example we were looking at, let's work with our status code first. So, and actually I will call this, well, let me think here. When we return our thing, we have a task. Maybe I'll call this data. Actually, I don't know. Let's do this instead. Let's actually console log what this task looks like. Save us all a bit of headache. Let's run this test. Curious to see what happens here. Okay, fetch is not defined. Huh, strange. Fetch is not defined. This might be because they don't support async functions in jest yet. Let's see. See if this error comes up. How can I fix it? Fetch is not defined. Oh, interesting. Non-fetched will continue to receive critical bug fixes. Huh. What version of Node are we using? 1.5, so we should be okay on that. Okay. Let's try this using fetch inside just describe. Interesting. Although it's pointing to the await. Huh. Oh, but they use request. Oh, interesting. Super. Okay. I may have jumped the gun a little here. So we're probably not going to be able to use fetch inside of this, which means that I'll have to take a look and see how we can actually implement this particular functionality. So instead, I guess we'll have to do this the old school way and pull up some Postman, test it ourselves. Don't you just love hitting walls when you're testing things? Okay. So going back here, we're going to grab that UUID, and let's run this and see if it works. Internal server error. Invalid prisma.test.find unique. Huh. Okay. And why is that? Where ID is params.id. So we got the ID from the params. Let's make sure that that's true though. What happens if I run this? One of ID arguments, available options are marked with question mark. Huh. Oh, we're passing it undefined. Well, that's the problem right there. Why aren't we getting the ID? Interesting. Okay, better question is, what comes in with params? I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of some of this so that we don't get this wall of error text. Oops. Okay, so there's the ID. Oh, you know what? Probably don't need a little colon here. Let's take a look. Is that how I've done it before? Oh yeah, definitely don't need that colon. Okay. That makes a lot more sense. So I think the problem that I was having just now is that I put this little colon in here, and so it's going to look for something more like this if I put the colon in, which doesn't even exist on the type that we're using right now. So there is no colon ID inside of our definitions. So let's try this out. Oh, there's a problem, is there? This problem. For all of you out there that run into this, I did a little looking into it, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is just a TypeScript bug. And the best thing to do is restart your TypeScript server. When you restart the TypeScript server, that error goes away. It's not one that makes much sense at any rate. Okay, so we're back here. Let's try this again. Hey, look at that. We returned the actual task that we were looking for. That is the same UUID. Beautiful. Okay, well, we at least know from our manual testing that this particular route now works. So I'll go ahead and save this for the next time. Spencer and I will go over that together. But I'll have to take a look into how to actually use Jest to test async functions. They do have some notes inside the actual, what's it called? Inside the documentation about this, I believe. What do they say? Oh yeah, no, since async server components, which is what we were trying to test, are new to the React ecosystem, Jest currently does not support them. While you can still run unit tests for synchronous server and client components, we recommend using an E2E test. An E2E test or E2E test for async components. Okay, so this is probably something to look into the next time we touch on this subject, and something that I'll be looking into as I continue developing, because I'm not sure even if this is the right way to be testing backend sort of functions and REST endpoints and such. Another thing I'll probably be looking into, but at the very least, we have a good start for just testing in general and setting up our test framework and what we're actually doing with that. So looking at the time, it looks like we're at about 11. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here. There's not much more to do today, at least. And yeah, this was a good session. I learned a lot about configuring unit tests with Jest inside of the Next ecosystem. I did a little bit of work on this yesterday, but even today I ran into problems that I haven't run into before, such as that one setting in the config file that seemed to cause an error, something that'll require a little more looking into. But even just the process of building a specific ID route for getting, not all tasks, but just a specific task based on ID was very useful. In the future, Spencer and I have talked about implementing a user table, essentially, or a user column inside of our database so that we can start storing user information, which will not only open up the ability to work on things like authentication and password management and things like that, but also open up the ability to start defining which set of tasks you see. Because right now, we're only returning all tasks that exist in the database, which means that anybody who uses this app, all of their tasks will be returned, which is unmanageable and not what you want. Or you can return tasks based on the task ID. But what we probably want to do eventually is have all the tasks returned to a user specifically for that user, which means that we'll want to return tasks based on the user ID. And the way we do that is we'll have to start relating our databases, which means we'll start using foreign keys and actually connecting two separate tables, whereas we only have one right now. but we'll, that's all we need at the moment. So that's something to look forward to for the future. In the meantime, I hope you all have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves out there, and peace. I'll see you next time.